The fastest way to buy a property, and if you've got a mortgage, how to pay off your mortgage in record time. Once you get to the end of this saving cycle, you're going to have to do something with the Bitcoin. And you've really got two options. One is that you sell the Bitcoin, you pay the capital gains tax owed to the government, and then you put the net amount into the deposit. So that's option one. Option two is that you don't sell the Bitcoin. But what would it look like now if we put the $20,000 into Bitcoin from day one at 29%, and let's see what it would do in 4 years. We'd get to $141,000. So it's going to be... I'm Matthew Fraser, and this is Crypto Collective. After making millions with Amazon and e-commerce, I realized that if I was starting again today, crypto would be my first choice. I'm here to help you take your first steps and build real wealth. Ready to set yourself up for life? Let's go. Hey guys, welcome to Crypto Collective. My name is Matthew Fraser, and in today's episode, I think it's going to be so special. It's the fastest way to buy a property, and if you've got a mortgage, how to pay off your mortgage in record time using Bitcoin. This is why I love Bitcoin. The synergy of using it with property, which is one of Australia's favorite pastimes, buying, selling, acquiring bricks and mortar, in conjunction with Bitcoin, okay? What I'm going to do today in this episode is show you what it's like for someone right now in the Australian market, which is how do they buy their first property? It's very, very tough because inflation is through the roof. People have got hardly any savings. You're also most likely paying rent. That's very, very high as well. So you're up against the wall right now. And for most people in Australia, it is their dream to own their own home, just like it was for me. Now, just to tell you though, I've been in the property space now for 25 years. I bought my very first property when I was 21, and growing up, buying property and investing in property was considered the best way to go to build wealth. It's only in the last few years that I've now made the transition from, hey, maybe property isn't the best tool to build wealth. It's now Bitcoin. But that said, people still want their own home. So what I'm going to do in this video today is walk you through step by step, comparing the numbers of if you were someone who's renting or living at home, whatever, saving up a certain amount of money every single week, how long is it going to take you to get to your deposit level versus if you were to invest that same amount of money into Bitcoin, how quickly could you expect to get the same result? Okay, guys, before I jump into it, I just want to tell you about something because you can now follow along at home, and that is a compound interest calculator. Here it is right there. I'll put a link to it in the description note so you can just find it straight on the App Store. It is the best thing to use. I live by this now. It was actually told to me by one of my mentors a few years ago, and I was like, why haven't I discovered this calculator before? And as someone famous like Albert Einstein said, compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. So, and once I give you these numbers, you are going to be blown away, okay? You won't even believe it. Let's make some assumptions here. Let's say you're buying a property in Brisbane. The average price for a Brisbane property right now is $935,000 right now. Just to give you an idea, I bought my first property back in the year 2000, it was a 2-bedroom unit in Nunda for $100,000 exactly. And then my wife bought her first property, which was in Hendra, for $306,000 in about 2001. So prices have certainly increased a lot. And so the trick right now for most people is trying to save up this deposit, okay? Because as I mentioned before, the discretionary spend right now is next to nothing. So, and property prices keep increasing. Okay, so let's just have a look at these numbers here. So we're going to pretend you're starting with a balance of zero, right? This is just scratch. You just thought the idea, I'm going to save up for a house. So we're going to start with $1. And let's just say that you're putting $200 away every single week. Okay, now you can adjust that number to whatever you think you can put in, and maybe I'll do it a couple of different scenarios, but let's say $200 a week. If you were to put that into a conventional savings plan, like with a bank right now, they're offering about 5.5% in a term deposit. So you could keep accumulating into that. So we'll say 5.5, and we're going to have to do some reverse engineering here somewhat. But our goal to get to this $935,000 property for a 5% deposit plus fees, we're talking about $70,000. Again, you can adjust that, but let's say our aim is $70,000. Well, first of all, I can tell you, just without the compounding, just calculate 70,000 divide 200 a week. It's going to take us 350 weeks. So divide 52. So that's going to be 6.7 years. Let's say 7 years without even any interest from the bank. It's going to take you to save up $70,000. Now, what's interesting is they say that in Australia, the price of a property doubles generally between 7 and 10 years. Okay, so this $935,000 property, by the time you've got your $70,000 deposit, you might actually find it's now $1.8 million to buy this property. And now you're going to need $140,000, right? So you are forever chasing your tail, and this is the problem. So let's go back to, let's just see if we put in, just to compare and give the savings plan the best possible scenario with the 5.5% in the bank. Let's see, 205, let's say 5 years. So we take 5 years to get to $60,000. So there it is. Okay, so at 5.5% sitting in the bank, you're putting $200 away every single week. It's going to take you 6 years. Okay, so that 5.5% in the bank is really only reducing your normal rate of savings by a year. Okay, because if you just stack it under your mattress, it's going to take you nearly 7 years. If you put it in the bank, you've now reduced it down to 6 years to get to your $70,000. Okay, now you might think that's great. I think that's rubbish. Okay, guys, so now let's look at the comparison of us putting the same $200 in every single week, but we're going to put it into Bitcoin. Okay, and it's called DCA, which is a dollar cost average. The reason why we want to put it into Bitcoin is because Bitcoin is going to give us a much greater return. Now, your question to me is going to be, how do I know that? Which is a great question. And you know what? This could be completely wrong. But what we can do is we can look back in history. What we do know is over the past 4 years, Bitcoin has had an average compounding interest of 55%. Okay, not 5.5, which is what the bank's offering, but it's been 55%. Over the last decade, it's been over 60%. This year alone, in 2024, it's over 100%. Okay, so when forecasting the future, we can say, well, it could be 29%. And the reason why I say 29% is because Bitcoin evangelist Michael Saylor, who's the biggest guy in Bitcoin right now, the smartest guy that I know in Bitcoin, he's predicting at a base case 29%. And he's predicting that 29% over the next 20 years because that is going to be the gold rush period for Bitcoin as nation states, governments, corporations all pile in to buy as much Bitcoin as possible. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about, just simply jump onto Google and type in President Trump, who's about to come in, who's planning on bringing in a Bitcoin treasury for the federal government of USA. So let's go 29% now. So what we're going to do, we're going to put in our $200 in every single week. Let's see what happens when we put in 29%. And let's start there with, let's say 6 years. So that now is going to give us $167,000. So it's more than double the $73,000 we would get to if we left it in the bank. Let's see what it would get to if we did 10 years. This is going to drop up to 610. And what would 20 years do? 20 years of savings. I think you want to get into your first home before then because your property is going to be really high. But interestingly, though, it would be 11.620 million. So $11.6 million, okay, which is incredible. Now we could get this faster because the question in the beginning was, how long would it take to get to the $70,000? So how long, if we put it into the 29%, if we did say 4 years, there we go. So it's actually going to be 4 years to get to $70,000 for our deposit if we invest in Bitcoin compared to the bank. Let's just see though, we'll throw some other numbers in there. Some people are suggesting that Bitcoin could, like I said, the last 4 years has been 55%, that the next 20 years could actually see an average of 50% with all of the adoption and the race for everyone to buy Bitcoin. So let's see what the 50% is going to do to our savings plan using the same numbers, let's say over 6 years. So now this is going to take it up to $391,000, which is going to be well and truly a great deposit. 10 years, this is where it gets really interesting, is going to be nearly $3 million. So I'm going to put in 3 million into that one. And 20 years, this is of course still putting in $200 in every single week. And then this figure would be totally insane. It would be $436 million, right? That is unbelievable, okay? I don't know if you're going to be worrying about deposit. You might be buying an island or something. Hey, just quickly, if you're ready to dive deeper into crypto and Bitcoin and build real wealth, join my free crypto collective community. It's where I share exclusive insights and strategies and live discussions to help you succeed. Whether you're a beginner or scaling your portfolio, click on the link in the description and join us today. Now back to the episode. So let's see, just as another interest point, if I was to put in more than $200, okay? And let's just say that you were really committed to buying this property. So you had a jet ski and you had a boat that was lying around, you sold those two things. Okay, so let's see what the numbers are gonna work out at. Now we're starting with $20,000. We've sold the boat and the jet ski and other stuff lying around the house. We're still gonna put in our $200 in every single week. And what would the bank give us? So at the bank, we're gonna have $101,000. That's in 6 years. But how long would it take to get to our $70,000 deposit though? Let's try some numbers. So it would actually take 4 years. If you started with $20,000 deposit, $200 a week, it would only take you 4 years to get to your $70,000 deposit. Okay, guys, so let's try Bitcoin. We're going to put the $20,000 into Bitcoin, still putting our $200 in every single week. And that is going to give us $141,000. And if we did it at 50%, that's going to take us to $277,000. So there you can see, no matter which way you skin it, putting it in the bank is going to be the worst option for you, because it's going to take you much longer to get your deposit. And that's why utilizing Bitcoin is so powerful. So let's just say though, once you get to the end of this saving cycle, you're going to have to do something with the Bitcoin. And you've really got two options. One is that you sell the Bitcoin, you pay the capital gains tax owed to the government, and then you put the net amount into the deposit. Okay, so you've now converted your Bitcoin back to cash and you give that to the agent to buy the property. So that's option one. Option two is that you don't sell the Bitcoin. And now you're going to be like, what do you mean don't sell the Bitcoin? Because right now in Australia and other parts around the world, you could borrow against the Bitcoin. Now, why is that so powerful? It's because when you don't sell the Bitcoin, now you don't have to pay capital gains tax. And if you borrow against the Bitcoin, that money is now tax-free because it's a loan, okay? And the other interesting thing about these types of loans with Bitcoin is that you generally don't have to show servicing to get the loan. Now, what does that mean? When you go to borrow money from the bank, they're going to want to see your pay slips. They want to see what you ate for breakfast, any other loans you've got, and determine that if you are eligible to even buy this $935,000 property. You might not be. You might actually get the deposit together, but find that your income is not enough to borrow the $880 or something thousand dollars. And then now you're in a different position. Now you've got to find a property that's much cheaper, or you continue saving with Bitcoin to get to, and even in this scenario here, perhaps you come up with after 10 years, $610,000. Because what I'm thinking now is I can actually go into this part here, right? And then in this column and then say, okay, you started with your $20,000 deposit. What are the other options? How much will you get? So therefore, if you can't get enough money from the bank because you don't qualify through servicing, Bitcoin could be another alternative to get your savings faster. And of course, then use that money to buy property in the future, whether you sell the Bitcoin or you borrow against the Bitcoin. So when you're borrowing against the Bitcoin, I mentioned before that you don't have to show servicing like you pay slips. That's because what these lenders do is they capitalize the interest. Now, what that means is they're going to tack the interest component of that loan on top of the loan. So let me talk to you in real numbers, round figures. Let's say you've got $100,000 worth of Bitcoin. These lenders will lend up to 50% of the Bitcoin. So you hand your Bitcoin over to the lender, they're going to give you $50,000 in cash. The interest on that is about, let's say, 10% for the year. So now you owe the $50,000 plus $5,000, which is 10% of the 50, now in interest. So your total debt now becomes $55,000. Now with that debt, you don't have to make any repayments. And you say, well, how do you mean? How do we don't make any repayments? Is because at the end of the 12 months, they're going to refinance that loan into now a new loan of $55,000 and then another lot of interest for the year. And the advantage is that over time, your Bitcoin is also going up because you haven't sold the Bitcoin. And your Bitcoin's going up at anywhere between 29% to 50%, you're always going to have enough room to keep borrowing more and rolling over that interest into the future. So guys, if you're thinking about this type of strategy, in particular, the one I mentioned about borrowing against your Bitcoin, just note that in my online community called Crypto Collective, you can get in there for free. I've got step-by-step guides of how to do this type of scenario. And I've also got a list of all of the lenders that are currently out there who are all based in Australia who will lend against Bitcoin. So it's all there for you to tap in, absolutely free. Find the link in the description. So I've just talked about how you can fast track your way to buying a property in Australia by utilizing Bitcoin. But what if you've already got a mortgage and you're thinking, I'd love to pay that off as soon as possible. But for most people, they're paying their mortgage over 30 years. They're most likely paying the minimum repayment required, which then stretches it out over that time. But here's an idea for you. Most people at the moment have a principal and interest repayment, which means you're paying some of the money owed plus interest every single week. The idea is you stop paying principal and interest and you just pay interest only. By paying interest only, you're now reducing your repayment per week. With the difference in repayment now, you now utilize that money and invest it into Bitcoin. And let's have a look at the power of investing that money into Bitcoin over the next foreseeable future. Let's do some calculations. Again, back onto the compound interest calculator. Okay, guys, so let's say you own a property. It's valued at $935,000 against the average. Your loan, let's say, is $888,000. Okay, so the principal and interest repayment on that right now at 7% interest is $1,364 a week, or interest only is $1,195. And the difference between those two payments is $169 a week. Okay, so that's the number that we're going to use. So in your own mind, you haven't shelled out any more money out of what you were already forking out. Okay, and let's see if we put this 169 now into Bitcoin based on some of the variables, what sort of number are we going to get to? So back to compound interest calculator and follow along. We're going to start with $1. Let's start with 29% for the same reasons I mentioned before about Michael Saylor's base case. And let's see what it would look like over 10 years. Okay, so let's see what kind of numbers we get to over the next 5 years, putting the $169,000 into Bitcoin. And that's going to get us to the best part of $98,000. Okay, not huge, but it's going to be obviously much greater amount of savings than what you would have done if you just left it paying off the mortgage. Okay, because the mortgage is only charging it is 7%, but this is now at 29%. Let's see now if we change the duration. We're going to put the same amount of money in over 10 years. We're now up to $516,000. And over 20 years, so between year 10 and year 20, we're well and truly going to have enough money to pay out the mortgage, okay? Because that is the aim of the game in this scenario. Now, let's see though, because we think it could possibly be a 50% compounding interest over the next 20 years. Let's use the same numbers again. So we're still putting in our 169 difference into Bitcoin every single week. And after 5 years, it's a much larger increase, 194,000 over 10 years. Really starts jumping up now at 2.5 million, and 20 years is a whopping $369 million. Are you even going to care about your mortgage? No, you're going to be thinking about what islands am I going to be buying, okay? That is going to be the savings plan of your whole family's generations and generations to come. They will be thanking you for taking those steps. So as you can see here, guys, it is so powerful, the power of compound interest, particularly working with one of the scarcest, most desirable asset right now on the planet, which is Bitcoin. Let's just have a look at this scenario again, but let's use a couple of different figures. One is going to be, instead of putting in 169, which was the difference in your repayment, let's say you've got a little bit of extra cash as well. Let's see how powerful that could be. So we're going to take the 169 up to $300 a week. So let's go back to our, we've started with nothing. We're going to start with 29% average. We're going to start with 5 years, and we're putting in $300 a week into Bitcoin. That is going to get us to $174,000 in year 5. In year 10, $916,000. And in year 20, $17 million. Okay, so you can see how we're just going to compare it to this one here, 98, 516, and 9.8 million, because now we've upped the amount of money we're putting in, and not even by that much, right? Really just like 130 bucks a week. Let's see now what it's going to do if we can get to 50% compounding interest using the same amount of money per week of $300. In 5 years, we're going to get to 344,000. In 10 years, we're going to get to basically 4.5 million. And in 20 years, it's going to give us $655 million. Absolutely insane. So just having a look at that, it's 369 million, putting in $169 a week, or 655 million, putting an extra $130 a week. Right? Now you can go and do your own numbers with the compound interest calculator. You can obviously increase the amount of money you're putting in per week. You could reduce the interest rate if you think it's not going to be that high, and just sort of play around with the numbers to figure out and come up with a thesis that you think is right for you. Okay. But guys, I really hope you've enjoyed this episode, because I love property and I love Bitcoin even more now. Okay. And I think this is going to be so powerful for people as they start to realize how Bitcoin can actually help their lives. Again, if you want to find out more information, find the link to my online community, absolutely free. It's Crypto Collective. Find it in the description. Look forward to seeing you there. Thanks for joining me. Take care. Thanks for tuning in to Crypto Collective. If you've enjoyed this episode, the best way to show your support is to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcast or Spotify, and make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel so you don't miss an episode. You can also find more of me at I'm Matthew Fraser on all social media platforms.